morning to you. Let's stand together. I was walking the wayside, lost on a lonely road. I was chasing the highlight, trying to satisfy my soul. All the lies I believed in left me crying like the rain. Then I saw lightning from heaven, and I've never been the same. I'm gonna climb the mountain, I'm gonna shout about it. I am a child of love. I found a world of freedom, I found a friend in Jesus. I am a child of love. I felt the sting of the fire, but I saw you in the rain. Yeah, just when I thought it was over, yeah, I know you brought me out of the grave. Hallelujah, I'm gonna climb the mountain, I'm gonna shout about it. I am a child of love. I found a world of freedom, I found a friend in Jesus. I am a child of love. Yeah. Oh, I am a child of love. Yeah. Oh, I am a child of love.
Nothing can change the way you love me. Nothing can change the way I belong to you. Yes, I do. Nothing can separate.
Y'all sing that with us. Nothing can change the way
You love me.
Oh, nothing can
Nothing
change.
can change the way
I belong to you. Yes, I do. Nothing can separate. I'll play that bass guitar. I'm gonna climb the mountain, I'm gonna shout about it. I am a child of love. I found a world of freedom. I am a child of love. Yeah. I'm gonna climb the mountain, I'm gonna shout about it. I am a child of love. I found a world of freedom, I found a friend in Jesus. I am a child of love. Let's play it, lads. Oh, I am a child of love. Yeah.
All right, y'all can go ahead and have a seat. Well, good morning. It's great to be together in Leander, Liberty Hill, and online on this beautiful spring day. We've got a great service for you. My name is John Evans, and I'm one of the pastors here.
And I'm Adina, and if you are watching online, we would love for you to just say hello. Let us know where you're watching from. And if it's your first time joining us, just go ahead and text in the keyword, and we are going to send you a free cup of coffee.
Yeah, and if you're in person, text that keyword, and after service across the lobby, we've got a welcome table. We'd love to just meet you, hear how you got to Rock Point, and we've got a Rock Point shirt to give you to say thanks for being with us.
And whether you are joining us in person or online, we want you to know that you are a part of a church that believes in helping people heal from life's hurts. And one of the ways that we do that is through disaster relief trips.
Yes, and we have one coming up on the 22nd through 24th, and there is just no substitute to experiencing the mission and being on one of these trips. I've been on a few myself, and it's just so powerful to just help people in their situation. And so you can register through the mobile app or online.
We have a great service plan. The band has a few more songs to sing, so why don't you guys sing along with us?
Oh, I searched the world, but it couldn't fill me. Man's empty praise, treasures that fail are never enough. But then you came along and put me back together. Now every desire is now satisfied here in your love. Oh, there's nothing better than you. Oh, there's nothing better than you. Oh, there's nothing, nothing is better than you. Oh, no, I'm not afraid to show you my weakness, my failures and flaws. Lord, you see them all, and you still call me friend. The God of the mountain is God of my valley, and there's not a place your mercy somebody say, oh, there's nothing better than you. Oh, there's nothing better than you. Oh, there's nothing, nothing is better than you. You turn mourning to dance. You give beauty for ashes. Turn shame into glory. You're the only one who can. You turn crazy into glory. You turn bones into armies. Sing it now. You turn seas into highway. You're the only one who can. Oh, there's nothing better than you. Oh, there's nothing better than you. Oh, there's nothing, nothing is better than you. Oh, there's nothing if you're in your kitchen singing this, sing it out, come on. Oh, there's nothing better than, oh, there's nothing, oh, better than you. Oh, there's nothing, oh, nothing is better than days may be darkest, but your light is greater. You light our way, God, you light our way. When evil is rising, you're rising higher with power to save, with power to save. Come on, let me hear you sing. You keep. Oh, you keep hope alive. You keep hope alive from the beginning to end. Your word never fails. You keep hope alive because you are alive. Jesus, you are alive. Here we go. Death had a stronghold, yeah, but your life was stronger. You rose from the grave, rose up from the grave. Oh, say, when evil is rising, yeah, you're rising higher with power to save, with power to save. Oh, say, you keep hope alive. You keep hope alive from the beginning to end. Your word never fails. You keep hope alive because you are alive. Jesus, you are alive. There's hope in the morning, hope in the evening, hope because you're living, hope because you're breathing. There's hope in the breaking, hope in the sorrow, hope for this moment, I hope for tomorrow. There's hope in the morning, hope in the evening, hope because you're living, hope because you're breathing. There's hope in the breaking, hope in the sorrow, hope for this moment, my hope for tomorrow. Keep hope alive. You keep hope alive from the beginning to end. Your word, it never fails. Say, you keep hope alive. You keep hope alive from the beginning to end. Your word, it never fails. You keep hope alive because you are alive. Jesus, you are alive. Oh, you keep hope alive. You keep hope alive from the beginning to your word never fails. You keep hope alive because you are alive. Jesus, you are alive. Well, hey, thanks for hanging out with us today. You guys are welcome to have a seat.
I'm sitting in the parking lot of the Hope Group, a place where 43 recovery meetings a week take place. You know, one day I sat in a parking lot just like this. My life was messed up and I needed help out of the pattern of living that really had left my life broken. And I sat there that night hurting and judgmental of the people I watched who were going in to get help. But they were getting help. and I was sitting in the parking lot in my pain. All these years later, I'm so glad that group existed for me to walk into. You know, addiction affects not only those in its grip, but their families who suffer with them, their friends, coworkers, employers, and anyone who shares the road and interacts with them. Helping people and their families have the tools to heal from life's hurts, that's our passion and that's our purpose. Recently, the city of Cedar Park told these 43 recovery meetings that they needed to move to make way for new city construction. And so they jumped into action and have now purchased 3 acres in Leander and need to build the new Hope Group building. Every one of us has been affected by addiction in some way. We need these 43 recovery meetings in our city every week, and we can do something about it. So today, I'm introducing Project 43. This is our initiative to give $25,000 between Easter and Mother's Day towards building a new home for this Hope Group. If we all do something, this is an easy win for Rock Point Church, and it is a life-changing win for those who will attend those 43 meetings. So look, I'm not asking you to give to a church. I'm asking you to give. It looks like we're rolling a little bit, so let me finish that. We introduced on Easter Project 43, and Project 43 is just our initiative between Easter and Mother's Day to bring together $25,000 to make sure that those 43 recovery meetings continue every single week in our city. And we have been at that, and so today I want to tell you that what has happened is we have now over $21,000 given towards that, so that's really good, right? So we're just a couple of weeks away from that, so it'd be great for us to wrap that up and exceed that. And so today, if you want to be a part of that, obviously you can do that by giving online or even in person here today, and just mark that, whatever that fund is, online, which is Project 43, and you'll see that on there. You also could, maybe you saw on the video, you can also just text the number 512-710-2323. You can text P43, like the letter P, and then the number 43, and that'll just get you right to it. And so, again, 512-710-2323 is how you do that. And so I'm just so excited, $21,000, and we are well on our way. We get to make that presentation on Mother's Day, and so that ought to be an exciting time as well. And so I'm just excited about what we get to do in our community and how we get to be a part and keep moving forward. And so thank you for everyone who's given towards that so far, and for those of you who still want to, there's still time to do that, and I hope you will. Well, I just want to say hello. I'm glad that you're here. Whether you have joined us right here, it's great to see you. Whether you are in Liberty Hill, it's great to see you as well. So glad that you've joined us there. Or if you're sitting on your couch or camping or wherever you may be, but you've logged in, we're really glad that you're watching and that you're here with us. And I just want to welcome you back to this week's episode of I Found. If you've been following along, let me just be up front with you. You already know I've got an agenda in this series. I don't want that to come as a surprise. I don't want it to be a gotcha at the end where we're playing some song and you feel emotional. I don't want to surprise you. So let me tell you what my agenda is. I would like for everyone who's not a Christian to become a Christian. And I just want to tell you up front, for you who maybe are on the edges, those of you who maybe grew up in church, but then you left church, those of you who are like, why would I even want to do that? Let me just tell you, my deepest desire is that you would become a Christian. And if I were to have a conversation with you today over lunch and say, hey, why won't you become a Christian? I believe you'd have a great response to that. You know, you might even have a list of obstacles or questions, and maybe your obstacles to being a Jesus follower. I mean, one of your obstacles might be, well, like, why? What's the point? Why would I do that? It's not like I have some big issue with God. It's just like I kind of don't care about all that stuff. It could be like, hey, there's just too much suffering in the world. Why would God let that happen? It could be because of your parents' religion. It could be, Christians, and they're so arrogant, they think they're the only ones that are right. But look, if you're not a Christian, there's a good reason. You have a reason, and it's a good reason. So here's what we've been saying.
that if you were to ever become a Christian, chances are it wouldn't be because you resolved your obstacle with God or you got all your questions answered. Chances are you would become a Christian because something happened that took those obstacles and made them smaller. And what would happen would be very, very personal, because Christianity is extraordinarily personal in nature. That's usually how we become Christians. So look, instead of us doing a message series on whatever your obstacle might be, that's not really how someone becomes a Christian anyway. And if I were to resolve all of those questions at the end of our conversation, you might be a little bit smarter, but you wouldn't be a follower of Jesus. And if you're ever going to become a follower of Jesus, something will happen that is so personal that it will shrink those obstacles. But like every Christian I know, you're going to carry some of those questions into your relationship with God. Outside Christianity, religion is just like this category, this thing you talk about. God, he's just kind of like a category. But your heavenly Father, who has invited you to call him that, doesn't want to be a category. He wants it to be personal. It's a little bit when you hear people who don't have kids talking about having kids, right? It's like they're talking about kids like they're this category out there, not like this personal thing, right? I did it, I'm sure you did it. We hear people talking about it. And here's what they'll say. They'll say, oh, I don't want kids, or I only want one kid. And then they'll go, wait, should we get one kid or should we go ahead and get two, right? Like it's a category of a purchase out here. And so I just thought it might be kind of fun, because I always like to have some fun, but I thought it might be fun if I brought along a list of reasons why people should only have one or two kids, right? Now look, I'm the parent of 4, so I know what this is about, all right? But there's a list. So here's my list. Here's one of the first ones. The first one is this. I think reasons why people should only have one or two children is transportation. I mean, let's just be practical, right? Transportation becomes way more complicated whenever you have more than 2 kids. You have 3, transportation's a problem because somebody's got to sit in the back seat, or they all got to sit there together and then they touch each other, and that's an issue. And then you end up having to buy an SUV or, God forbid, a minivan. And you look, you can't have a car with 3 kids, right? So just stick to 2 kids, all right? Here's another problem, right? It's expense, right? Expense is another problem. I mean, it is exponentially more expensive to go from 2 to 3, believe me. Here's another one, housing, right? Housing is an issue. You have 2 kids, you can have 1 bathroom to share. You have 3, someone's gonna get their own bathroom, and then that's an issue of who gets it and how long do they get it for. It just becomes an issue. And then here's another one. This is kind of a big one. It's the middle child syndrome, right? I mean, how many of you are middle children, right? Yep, see, yeah, just like me. Look at how many of us have to come to church to deal with our childhood issues, right? See, the middle child is a problem because middle children don't get attention for very long, because a third one comes along and now they're the baby, right? And so the middle child is like, hey, I'm over here. And they just kind of get lost in the shuffle, right? And so that's bad. And so if you have more than 2 children, you're basically creating a new job and creating work for a counselor someday, all right? So just want you to know that, all right? And then here's another thing I would put on my list is parental overload, right? Parental overload. If you have 2 kids, it's like 2 on 2. It's an even match. You add another one, you are outmatched and you're gonna lose, all right? I mean, that's just all there is to it, because not everybody can get the same attention. And then there's one other I would add to this. I just call it pairing up, right? So you're pairing up. And you saw this if you were raised in a family with more than 2 kids. You already know this is true, right? Because there are 2 kids who seem to really, really connect, and then there's one that doesn't really feel like a part of the group or a part of the family. And sometimes that creates all kinds of psychological damage down the road. And so here's the point, right? Here's the point. We could debate and we could argue all of these things, In fact, let's just keep this going for just a minute, all right? Let's just make another list, all right? So you guys, give me a blank screen on this one of reasons why people should only have one or two kids. And I just thought it might be fun if you would just maybe give me your reasons of why people should only have one or two, not three or four or more. And so I'm just gonna let you shout them out in a minute. If you're online or you're in Liberty Hill, you're gonna have to like really yell so I can get them up here on the screen, all right? But today, before we make this list, before I hear your reasons, I've got a couple of assistants I'd like to introduce to you. And this is Cammie and Ty, all right? So Cammie is, hi guys. Cammie is 16 and she's a sophomore at Liberty Hill High School. This is Ty. He's 14 and he's a freshman at Liberty Hill High School. And so, look, I'm just gonna let you guys call out some reasons why 2 children are enough. But before we do that, let me just say, Cammie is my 3rd child, and Ty is my 4th child. They have an older brother or sister. Okay, I just made the list a little awkward, didn't I? And what makes it awkward? That no matter how many reasons you might shout out or how many we could list that 2 is enough, at the end of this discussion, let me just tell you, that would be really, really personal for me. Extremely personal, probably for you guys too. I mean, like, here's the reason why. Here they are. I'm not gonna see your list of things you put up here and then go, hey guys, look, I've seen the list and I'm convinced now I'm gonna have to find another family who only has 1 or 2 kids and you guys gotta go live in another family, right? No, that's not gonna happen. But because what happens? The discussion moves from something that's just a category of should we have 1 or should we get 2 to something that's very, very personal. Ty and Cammie, you guys are awesome for coming out here. Let them know thank you so much. You guys are awesome. Now look, that's the same as the whole Christian thing. This is how people become Christians. The discussion moves from something categorical to something extremely personal. In fact, when you think about the summary statement of Christianity, like the verse of the statement that maybe we're really familiar with, like if you were to go to Christianity 101 and they were to hand out the syllabus, this would be the summary statement on it, and you're probably really familiar with it because it's just so personal, and it seems to ignore all the questions. This summary statement seems to ignore all the obstacles and all the emotions that go with that stuff and that go with church and Christianity. The summary statement of Christianity is found in the book of John, and it goes like this. I know you've heard it before. Look at this. For God so loved. Now you got to pause on that, right? That is the introduction to Christianity. All the obstacles, all the questions, and this is so intensely personal that the change that comes into people's lives, honestly, it doesn't happen once they get all their questions answered. The change comes, their hearts open, minds change when it dawns on us, God is so personal that he loves me. And I'm telling you, that is when the light comes on. That's when the big obstacles get small. That's when the questions that are enormous that we wrestle with get smaller, is when you are open to the fact that God absolutely loves you. And not only does he know your name, but he cares about you. Today, I want you to hear this story from a friend of mine that explains that.
Is it so hard to talk about how much how much I know God loves me, and how much I know that, and not to be so happy and excited and just want to tell the world. It's so hard for me to talk about God's love and not feel like this. God loves you, like for real. And man, I mean, I can't scream it. I can't scream it loud enough. God loves you. I didn't have much of an example, really, of what it looked like to be a productive member of society. I don't know who my biological dad is. When we were growing up, there was 5. I was the oldest out of 5 kids. My mom, you know, she did the best she could. So she married a truck driver. But so while he was gone, we got to see other dudes come in and out. And, you know, and what that looked like. And, you know, so we didn't really have much of an example of what love looked like. Before she got married, you know, there was 3 of us, and we got put in foster homes quite a bit. Those were the safe places. That's probably the first time I had interaction with God in my life. But it was the places that we got left. And we wouldn't see our mom for months and months. But she'd leave us just wherever she thought. I don't even think she cared, really. I mean, she just was worried about what she was doing. And you know, every kind of abuse that you could imagine happened in some sort of way to me and my little brother. And in those places, she'd leave us. And so, you know, and love was not, I had a very skewed view of what love was supposed to look like. I ended up in my 4th treatment center. And I had to do something different. I couldn't do that again. I had 2 little girls, and I had already had 2 sons that I hadn't seen in like 5 or 6 years, and I'm 30 years old, and so I couldn't do that to my girls. They're only like 4 and 5, and I was like, man, I got to do something different. So I started going to church in there. I got out, started walking with God, you know, and man, God started putting these people in my life that would love me even through my struggles. Didn't matter how I acted. A lot of them still love me today, 20 years later, you know. My wife, you know, she got to see the worst, you know, dude ever. I was a terrible person, and she loved me for 10 years. She didn't even know God. And God was loving me then. Man, I started reading 1 Corinthians 13. It talks about the way of love. I read it every morning, and sometimes when I ain't feeling it, I'll listen to it again during the day. And then I started looking at other stuff that Paul wrote, and the other letters. And then they all pointed to the same thing, right? Pinpoint. Love God, love others. That's it. I mean, all the other stuff is just a jumbled pile of, just get it out of the way and start doing that. And no matter what else is in the middle, it'll work out. And I'll just say, real easy, real easy. Man, I found the love of Jesus.
Look, I'm just telling you, if it ever dawns on you how much God loves you, everything on your list, including your really tough experiences that are kind of the fuel behind your objections, all of that begins to get smaller. That's how people become Christians. God so loved the world that he did something. God got involved. And look, today, here's what I want to do with the rest of the time we have together. I want to take you back to God's first involvement that ultimately resulted in this thing called Christianity. And look, the story doesn't begin with the day that Jesus was born. The story begins 2,000 years before that, when God decided to get involved. And here's what's just so cool about this story, is that God got involved in the most personal way. And he didn't send some FAQ page with a bunch of answers. He didn't send a bunch of commandments or laws or even an explanation. What God did was absolutely amazing. God revealed himself on his terms to one person. And it was as personal as it could possibly get. In fact, it was a 180 from what everyone else in the world thought about God at that time, because this was a time when people were very, very much like we are today. Because they viewed God as some sort of cosmic vending machine that you just had to figure out what the right code was to put in, and then you would get what you wanted from God. And so all over the world, people would sacrifice animals, they would sacrifice children, they would cut themselves, they would burn things, all kinds of stuff, trying to get God or the gods to do what they wanted. Like, we need God to bless our crops. What are we supposed to do? And somebody would say, oh, I think if you do these 3 things. So they do those 3 things trying to get God to bless their crops. We want God to give us more children. And somebody would say, well, here's what you got to do if you want God to give you more kids. And the world was just full of superstition, very much like it is today. There was all this confusion about God, very much like today. And again, people's approach to God then was a little bit like it is now. In fact, let's just be honest. We can prove that because we've all negotiated with God before. Even if you weren't sure there was a God, you've tried it. Because there's something in us that says, God, here are my terms. So, God, I don't want you to say anything. Just listen for a minute, and let's just see if we can get this deal worked out. And after you've put in enough quarters, maybe you've kicked the machine 2 or 3 times and you don't get anything in return, we turn and we walk away. We walk off and say, well, that just doesn't work for me. Or there is no God. Or there's nothing to any of that. That's the kind of world that God interrupted 4,000 years ago in the most personal way when he appeared to this guy that you've heard his name, Abraham. See, this is the story, get this. This is the story where Jewish people, Islamic people, and Christians all agree that God's first interaction after Adam and Eve was with this guy named Abraham. And God came in the most personal of terms, and he said this, Abraham, I'm starting over. I want the world to know who I am. And after considering the options, the best way to start is with an individual. And Abraham, I've chosen you. And look, we don't know why it was him, but God said, here's what I want to do. So Abraham, pack up your immediate family, which was very small, which was part of the problem. And I want you to move far, far away, and I want you to leave your extended family and leave behind all your household idols and all your dad's household idols and all your understanding of God, because this is the beginning of something new, and I'm going to do something big, but I'm going to begin it in the most personal way. And it begins in Genesis 12, and this is the story of Christianity. This is this very, very personal thing that results in us being able to call God our Father. Look at how this happens. It says this, then the Lord, get it, right? Then the Lord said to Abraham, leave your country, your people, and your father's household, and go to a land that I'm going to show you. And he makes him 3 incredible promises. Take a look at these. He says, and I will Come on and move on one with me. I will make you great, a great nation, and I will bless you, and I will make your name great, and you'll be a blessing. I'll make you a great nation. We know that came true. That's the nation of Israel. And then everybody listening, come on, we've already heard his name Abraham, haven't we? And this was written 4,000 years ago. That promise came true. And then take a look at verse 3. It says, I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I'll curse, and all the peoples on the earth will be blessed through you. In other words, Abraham, I'm going to do something for everyone. But I'm beginning with a person because what I want people to understand is I'm not a category. I don't want to be mystery God. I don't want this to be religion. I want this to be personal. And so I started this whole thing off with a conversation with a person, you, Abraham, and not because of anything you've done right. Because look, Abraham didn't even know right from wrong. There was no law. There was no 10 commandments. There was no revelation. There was just a conversation. And then he continues. Take a look at what he says. He took him outside and said, Abraham, come on, I want you to go outside, right? And I've got this ridiculous question to ask you. Look up at the stars and count the stars if you can. And Abraham's like, yeah, I'm not even going to try to do that. I mean, you can't do that. And then he said to him, so shall your offspring be. Now, that's a real problem because Abraham was super old and his wife Sarah was old and they had 0 children. They wanted to have kids. They had done everything that everybody said they needed to do for the gods to give them kids, but they were an embarrassment to themselves and their society and their family because even the servants in that day could have kids, but they didn't have any kids. They weren't able to, and in that day, that was a big embarrassment. And now God was playing with them and saying, Abraham, I want you to count the stars. That's how many kids I'm going to give you. And the next statement, look, if you've never read the Bible, look, dude, this next statement is the pivotal statement in all of Scripture. This next little phrase is like the North Star for all the rest of the Bible. Look at what happened in verse 6. Abraham believed the Lord. He believed it. It's like, wait, Abraham, come on, you can't just believe it. I mean, aren't there some questions? I mean, don't you need to wrestle with this? Don't you need to maybe sleep on it? Wait. Don't you need to ask how? And God, where have you been? And what about this? Abraham believed the Lord. And look, this is huge. And if you never think you're ever going to consider Christianity, then you take this into the world of disbelief because this is so huge. That Abraham believed the Lord, and look at what it says, and he credited it to him as righteousness. Here's why that's so huge. In this moment, no 10 commandments, no law, no standards, no nothing. There's no church, just Abraham in a conversation with God. And he said, God, I don't know how. I don't know how long. I don't know where you've been, but I believe you. And in that moment, God gave to Abraham a righteous standing with God. And not because anything that Abraham had done, but because, come on, he hadn't done anything except for go outside and refuse to count stars, had he? He had done nothing. And God said, Abraham, as a testimony to the rest of the world and to kick this thing off, I'm going to give you a right standing with me, not because of anything you've done, but because you made a decision with all of your questions that you must have. You made a decision to simply trust me. And Abraham still didn't know what was about to happen to his family, and he had no idea why in the world God would allow him to live all these years with no child and allow his wife to suffer like she had all these years. Abraham had no answers for any of those questions, but in a moment, God said, personally, I'm coming to you on my terms. Now I want you to respond to me on my terms. And I just want you to believe me. And Abraham trusted God. And in exchange for Abraham's faith, God gave him a gift, a right standing with God. And that's how it's been ever since. you know what the moral of that story is? It's a super simple one. That God comes to people on his terms. This very personal relationship between a person and God always begins on his terms, not ours. But think about this. If you could take all of your objections and questions and whatabouts, if you could set them aside for just a minute, they're important. Like, don't let them go away. But if you could, let me ask you this. Isn't that what you would expect if there really is a God who created the sun, moon, and the stars and knows your name and loved you enough to say, I'm going to take care of your biggest problem, and it's not your mortgage and it's not your mother-in-law. Your biggest problem is your sin, and I'm going to once and for all take care of your sin. If there really is a God that big to be able to do that, wouldn't you expect that God to have the right to say, if we're going to have a relationship, it's going to be on my terms, not yours? Because my terms are the questions I haven't gotten answered. Aren't those yours? Your terms are that thing that happened to you as a kid. Maybe it happened to you while you were at church and someone betrayed you or someone took advantage of you because they were older and more spiritual. And those are your terms. Your terms are, God, why didn't you answer my prayer? Your terms are, God, I've put so many quarters into this machine and I've kicked it so many times and I got nothing from you. Those are your terms. And those are understandable terms. Your terms are the suffering you see happening in the world, and seemingly God does nothing. Your terms are you read the Bible, and you just don't understand how a good God could. Those are your terms. Miracles, come on, really? You have all these terms you would like for God to deal with. But if he's God, should we be surprised? Should we be shocked? Should we even be offended that he would reserve the right to come to people that he loves on his very own personal terms in spite of ours? For God so loved the world that he gave. He got involved. He came to us on his terms instead of ours. One day Jesus was teaching his disciples. And these guys, his closest friends, and they were confused a lot, a whole lot. And it was interesting because they actually came to him, and as they came to him, they were constantly having questions, which is just so interesting because it's just exactly like us. It's so much is like us that we have all these questions, and it's one of these moments that they asked Jesus this question that, you know, it's a question you've probably never asked because we don't think about this stuff. But they thought Jesus was one day going to whistle and angels were going to come sweeping in and defeat Rome. And because they had been faithful to him, we're going to be set up for life because, well, we're like his left hand and his right hand, and we've been following him this whole time. And so they're always wondering, Jesus, we're your chosen 12. Which one of us do you like the best? It's sort of like kid 1 and kid 2, right? Or in my case, 3 and 4. Like, who's your favorite? Well, they wondered about that stuff. And so one of those conversations brought up this incredible teaching by Jesus in Matthew 18. Take a look at it with me. Here's what it says. At that time, the disciples came to Jesus and asked, who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? We're looking for a name, Jesus. In other words, who's the closest? Who's worked the hardest? Who's earned the right? And I love this. In the middle of their questions, look at what Jesus did. He called a little child and had them stand among them. He calls this little kid to come stand, and they're asking, Jesus, who's the greatest? With all these people around, and Jesus goes, I'll show you. Hey, little man right over there. Hey, could you come here for just a minute? Can you just stand here in front of all these men? And so he's got this little boy standing there, all these men wondering, which one of us is it? We have all these questions, and this is really, really important, and this is a really good question, and I'm sure it is. Jesus, who's the greatest? And then he says this in verse 3. Take a look. He says, I tell you the truth. Unless you change, unless something about the way that you think and operate changes. You mean change like we need to do more, we need to show up to church more, we need to be obedient, be more holy, sing the songs louder, be better at church? Is that what you mean? No. He says, unless you change, and look at how he continues this, and becomes like a child, you will never enter. Bring it on with me. You will never enter the kingdom of heaven. It's like, wait. What about the 10 Commandments? What about we're faithful followers? Unless you change and become like this little child, you're never going to enter the kingdom of heaven. And get this, we're going somewhere with this. Unless you're willing to come to God, your Father, on His terms instead of your own, you'll never get there. There's always going to be an obstacle. There's always going to be a question. Unless you come on His terms, no matter how hard you work, you'll never get there. And then he tells us what he means. You take the story of Abraham and you take this story with this little boy and you put them together. And in this incredible moment of teaching built off of this incredible moment 2,000 years earlier, we discovered the terms in which God establishes a personal relationship with people like us. Whoever humbles himself like this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Abraham said, I trust you, even though I don't have answers to my questions. And Jesus says, yeah, you've got to come to me with the humility of a child. You've got to decide, God, I have a lot of questions, I got a lot of obstacles, but you know what? If you're able to be known, I trust you. This is why I asked you last week to begin praying, God, if you can be known, I want to know you more than I want to know answers to my questions. And you know what that's just a fancy way of saying? God, I'm coming to you on your terms, not mine. I'm coming with trust and humility of a child. And even if you can just rip Christians apart with your arguments, and even if you win the argument, you know it's not settled in your heart. And you know why? Because for God so loved that he's not going to let it be settled in your heart. And people have tried to address your biggest question and they can't answer it, but you know there's an internal tension inside of you. And do you know why? It's because God so loves you that he's not going to let that tension go away until you're willing to come to him on his terms. And when you do, he's going to do something so personal for you and in you and through you. And see, it's not about what happened to you 5 years ago, because are you going to let that define you for the rest of your life? It's not because someone disappointed you 12 years ago or 20 years ago and you made a decision about God. Are you going to let that define you and your understanding of God for the rest of your life? Would you, just for a couple of weeks, be willing to say, for the sake of just putting this to rest, like I'm going to set that aside because those have been my terms. And God, I want to know you more than I want the answers to all my questions. That's how people like you and like me become Jesus followers. That's how people like us come to faith in Jesus. And when it becomes a real personal encounter with God, some of the questions get answered. Some of the hurt gets resolved. Some of it never does. But here's what you find. They just get smaller because something that's happened inside of you, something that is just incredibly personal. And so I'm asking God for all of us who come here, for all of us who listen, for all of us who watch, and if you'd like to have that kind of faith, and you'd like to move beyond that hurt, you just don't know how to get there, I'm asking God that you would be willing to come to him like a child, saying, I trust you, and I trust your terms. And I believe God will honor that prayer, because if he sent his son to die for you, oh man, like Scotty said, how much he must love you. And wants you to know him the way he can be known. And when you step across that line, let me tell you, there is the love of God to be found. Let me pray for us today. Father, thank you. Thank you that you love us. Thank you that you give us that kind of love. God, would you help us to grasp that as we attempt to set aside these really good questions we have, these really big obstacles in our life for a few minutes, maybe a few weeks, and to try to come to you on your terms. Like a little child who, just like Abraham, says, I don't know how, and I don't understand it all, but I trust you. Father, would you help us? Because this is tough for us, like it has been for generations. But to find the answers for the love we've been missing in our life. And God, all our questions may not get answered. All our obstacles may not go away. But the fact that there is love to be found is just simply amazing. Father, would you help us as we try to accept that love from you in a big way? And we ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.
I've carried a burden for too long on my own. I wasn't created to bear it alone. I hear your invitation to let it all go. I see it now, I'm laying it down, and I know that I need you. So I run to the Father, I fall into grace. I'm done with the hiding, no reason to wait. My heart needs a surgeon, my soul needs a friend. So I run to the Father again and again and again and again. Oh, oh, oh. You saw my condition, had a plan from the start. Your son for redemption, what a price for my heart. I don't have a context for that kind of love. Oh, I can't understand it, I can't comprehend. All I know is I need you. I run to the Father, I fall into grace. I'm done with the hiding, no reason to wait. My heart needs a surgeon, my soul needs a friend. So I run to the Father again and again and again and again. Oh. My heart has been in your sight long before my first breath, running into you. Oh, and thank you, Lord. It's running to life from there. I feel this rush deep in my chest, singing now your mercy is calling. Just as I am, you pull me in, and again I run, oh, I run to. Done with my hiding, the weeds underway. My heart needs a soothe, my soul needs a friend. So I run to the Father again and again, and to carry. I'm coming back to you, Lord, again and again. I've carried a burden for too long now.
Welcome back, Rock Point. Hey, that was such a great service. And we want you to know that we are here for you. Whether you want prayer or you're ready to take your next step, you can connect with us through scanning this QR code. And at any time during the week, you can get on rockpointchurch.com and there you can connect with us that way as well. Hey guys, this is the time in our service that we set aside for giving, because everything that we do right here and in our community, we can only do because of you guys and your generous giving. So you can scan the QR code, and in that, there's also a place where you can give to Project 43, which is the project that Shane talked about at the very beginning of his message. Now, this is the time we say, kids, gather around, grab your kids, have a seat, because we're about to show you our family experience. All right, guys, we'll see you next week. Have a good week.
Hey everyone, we're having a great time this month as we find out how to make peace. When you make peace, it's like you're building a bridge across to the other person. You can reconnect with them and show them that you care, even if you don't always agree. The truth is, sometimes making peace with others is hard work. I'm so glad that we don't have to do this alone. We need to remember to ask God to help us as we try to make peace with others. Now, it's time to sing and dance as we worship God together.
You're my courage. I don't have to be afraid. You're my fortress, no matter what comes my way. You're my treasure forever. Yes, we'll be together always. Even when the days get harder,
This week, we are continuing to talk about peace. Peace is proving you care more about each other than winning an argument. Sometimes I don't want to make peace. I just want to get even. There's only one thing that will help me calm down and make the right choice: a can of chips. Sometimes when you want to fight with someone, it's good to focus your mind on something else. So I'm going to focus on building a curvy chip bridge, which requires so much focus, I'll have no room to think about all of the insults I can make. In today's story, we're going to see what a guy named Isaac did when he was insulted.
The Bible. It's 66 books of history, stories, letters, and poetry that fit together to form God's one big story. The epic adventure of how He created us and loves us so much that He made a way to rescue us. As we travel through the Bible, from Genesis to Revelation, we discover people who met God and found their lives changed forever. Now, for an amazing story, inspired by the book of Genesis. Chapter 26.
God had chosen Abraham to follow him, and God made the same promises to Abraham's son, Isaac.
I will make your children after you, as many as the stars in the sky, and I will give them all these lands. All nations on earth will be blessed because of your children.
Thank you, God.
The land of the Philistines where Isaac lived had experienced a period of famine, but God blessed Isaac's crops.
Hey, boss, we done gathered 100 times more wheat than we planted.
Excellent.
103.7 times as much, to be precise.
And your flocks and herds are multiplying like rabbits.
Actually, they're increasing like sheep and goats, because that's what they are.
Very well, carry on.
Unfortunately, the Philistines who lived nearby grew jealous of Isaac's success. They shoveled dirt into his wells, cutting off his water source.
Excuse me?
The king of the Philistines called for Isaac and issued a command.
You have become too powerful. Move away from us.
It wasn't fair. Isaac had plenty of men who could stand against the Philistines and fight, but he chose to keep his cool.
All right. We'll move down to the Valley of Gerar.
Isaac and his family packed up everything he owned.
I knew I should have been saving all those Camel X delivery boxes.
They moved on and made camp in the Valley of Gerar, where Abraham had lived many years before.
Oh, all right, men. Let's open up those old wells my father dug.
Isaac's servants immediately got to work, digging for water.
Ooh-wee! It's hotter than a snake in a hog's back out here.
My calculations of soil composition. We should hit water in precisely 2.6 seconds.
Well, ain't that the bee's knees?
Abraham's old wells filled with cool, clear water once again. The happy herds and flocks could drink their fill. That is, until the nearby Philistine herdsmen showed up.
So kind of you to open up these wells for us.
Step aside, the water's ours.
Isaac's servants gaped at the Philistines.
You got some nerve.
These wells belong to Isaac by ancestral tradition and dint of hard labor.
Whatever.
We're taking the well.
Oh yeah? We're gonna have to fight me for it.
I believe the appropriate course of action is to flee.
As Isaac's servants and the Philistine herdsmen faced off, Isaac himself arrived.
Easy does it, fellas. There's plenty of land in this valley for everyone. We'll move along.
But we can take them.
Let's go.
So Isaac and his family and his servants and his flocks all moved camp down the valley, and once again his servants set out to dig new wells.
This is an exercise in futility.
Yeah, well, I've been working out. My futility is really strong. Look here!
The new wells also produced clean, clear, cool water, but it wasn't long before Philistine herdsmen arrived on the scene.
Yes! Another day, another well for us.
Why, I'll flatten you back to the flood.
Step aside.
Eek, save me.
Once again, Isaac showed up.
Take it down a notch, please. There's still room for everyone.
Oh, come on, we could knock them flat.
Yes, we could, but we're not going to. Move on out, boys.
For a third time, Isaac and his men moved camp, and once again his servants dug new wells.
This time, I'm gonna tie those bullies in knots and dip them in garlic.
Oh, look, water. Yay.
Wait for it. Wait for it.
This time, no one challenged Isaac or his servants. They were left to tend to their flocks and herds in peace. That is until one day, Isaac spotted King Abimelech heading his way with a host of advisors. When the royal entourage arrived, Isaac welcomed them.
Why have you come to me? You were angry with me and sent me away.
Abimelech shifted and exchanged a glance with his advisors.
Well, we saw clearly the Lord was with you, so we want to make a peace treaty with you. We always treated you well. We sent you away peacefully, and now the Lord has blessed you. Give us your word you won't harm us?
I can do that.
Isaac prepared a feast for the Philistines. Early the next morning, the men made an agreement to keep peace with each other. Then, the Philistines went on their way.
Need a drink? Pretty good well right there by the road.
Yep, even though Isaac had the power to win a fight, he had chosen to stay strong and walk away 3 times in a row. And God had blessed him with peace.
If you want to be entered into this week's giveaway, text the word LIGHT, L-I-G-H-T, to 512-710-2323. The Philistines insulted Isaac when they sailed right in and took over his wells, causing him to move 3 different times. The truth is, Isaac had every right to be angry, and he knew he was strong enough to crush the Philistines. But Isaac also knew that he could make peace by simply digging another well. And in the end, the Philistines made a peace treaty with Isaac. Being strong doesn't mean you have to fight, and making peace doesn't mean you're weak. Think of Jesus. He was stronger than any of us, but he allowed himself to be arrested and put to death on a cross, so he can make peace with all of us once and for all. You're not weak when you make peace. When you choose to hold your temper and stay calm instead of losing it, you show others how strong you really are. So there's one thing to remember today. You can show you care about others by walking away from a fight. Don't get me wrong,